Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to week 7 of the BioTalk series hosted by the Department of Biotechnology from St. Joseph's College of Engineering. The speaker for this session is Dr. P. A. Balakumaran, who will be talking about 13C based metabolic flux analysis. Before we start, I request you all to follow a few instructions to ensure the smooth sailing of the event. Please do not introduce yourselves in the chat box and kindly post any questions you have for the speaker in the chat box and they will be answered during the Q&A session in the end. If you face any technical difficulties at any point, relate them in the chat box and we will look into it. The feedback link will be posted in the chat box and it is necessary to fill it up for receiving the e-certificate. Ensure that you enter the correct details as they will be used to generate the certificates. It will be posted sometime during the end of this session. We will now begin on an auspicious note with the Tamil Thai Valtu. I now call upon the organizer, Ms. K.R. Preeti, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Swatika. Hello, one and all. A very bright and pleasant evening wishes to everyone joined here across the globe. To start with a quote, you can't teach people everything they need to know. The best you can do is position them where they can find what they need to know when they need to know it. So, we, the Department of Biotechnology from St. Joseph's College of Engineering, with this webinar BioTalk series, positioning the way forward for the ambitious students, teaching fraternity, eminent research scholars, and elite industrialists around the globe, and doing it constantly for the 7th week now. We have a knowledgeable and organized resource person, Dr. P. A. Balakumaran, scientist and assistant professor, MPTD, CSIR NIST, Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, joined us to provide us an excellent way forward on 13C metabolic flux analysis. With immense pleasure, my grateful and heartfelt welcome to the resource person, our management, our head of the department, my colleagues, my dear students, and beloved participants for today's event. Now, I request our head of the department, Dr. G. Srikumar sir, to deliver an inclusive welcome address to one and all. Kindly take over the session, sir.
Good evening to my dear students and participants. I'm happy to see you all again in the week 7 event of BioTalk lecture series. I should proudly say that our department keeps our students and other regular participants in line with the current trends of biotech research even in this lockdown period. In fact, our objective behind this BioTalk lecture series is that the pandemic outbreak should not be an hindrance for enhancing our knowledge. So far, 6 technical lectures have been successfully presented under this title, which were appreciated by all with positive feedback. For the sake of new participants and the newly joined people, I wish to highlight some of the credits of the college and the department. St. Joseph College of Engineering, one of the top colleges in India with the 160th position as per current NIRF ranking. It has got 26 years of high reputation, educational society with the NAC A+ grade accreditation and having 10 UG programs and 7 PG programs with an affiliation from Anna University, Chennai. Biotechnology is more than 18 years old, having 8 BTech and MTech biotechnology programs under it. Since inception, we have bagged 139 university ranks with 10 golds and 7 silver medals with 100% pass percentage every year. The department has got sophisticated laboratory facilities and fetched research center recognition status through PhD program and having more than 1.1 crores of rupees as government funding to conduct research. Metabolic flux analysis is one of the pillars of metabolic engineering. Over the past 3 decades, it has been widely used to quantify intracellular metabolism in both wild type and genetically engineered microorganisms. The interactions between genetics and environmental factors of the strain can also be easily studied using metabolic flux analysis. In this, an advanced technique using C13 isotope-based metabolic flux analysis augments the entire process of metabolic network by high resolution with improved accuracy and precision. Because of this importance, a neologism term named fluxomics have been coined, which is nowadays got a very vital place in the omics technology, forming the backbone of system biology. To make us more informed in this unique field, today we have an eminent personality with us who is an expert in metabolic flux analysis, Dr. P.A. Balakumaran, scientist and assistant professor of CSIR National Institute of Interdisciplinary Science and Technology, Trivandrum, Kerala, India. I welcome you, sir, to be as the resource person for this week 7 BioTalk series. At this moment, I also wish to comment about the overwhelming responses shown by the participants. There are 941 registered participants, 385 UG and 131 PG students, and 283 faculty members. There are 142 research scholars and industry personnel in it. They are from 25 states across India, countries that includes Australia, Indonesia, Morocco, Nepal, Nigeria, Congo, Oman, Pakistan, South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, etc. With this proud note, on behalf of the patrons of the event, Dr. B. Babu Manohar, Chairman, Ms. Jessipriya, Managing Director, Mr. Sashi Shekhar, Director, Dr. V. Seshagiri Rao, Principal, and Dr. Parvatavardhini, Dean. And on my own behalf, I also wish to inaugurate this 7th BioTalk lecture series on C13 based metabolic flux analysis. I wish to mention a special wish to the organizer, Madam K.R. Preeti, who is an assistant professor in Department of Biotechnology, and also to my dear student coordinators from final year. All the best. Thank you. Over to Ms. Swatika.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Now, without further ado, let's get into today's session. The guest speaker for this session, as mentioned before, is Dr. P.A. Balakumaran. Dr. P.A. Balakumaran completed his bachelor's in industrial biotechnology from Sri Andal Alagar College of Engineering in Mamandur and went on to obtain his master and PhD in biotechnology from the Center of Biotechnology in Anna University. He was the recipient of many awards and fellowships like the DAAD Fellowship and the CSIR Senior Research Fellowship. He has published various papers in well-renowned peer-reviewed journals such as the PLOS One, BMC Biotechnology, Preparative Biochemistry and Biotechnology, and many other book chapters. He also has filed a patent currently for a biodegradable surfactant formulation. He has attended several conferences and workshops and has also been invited to talk in many of them. He is associated with the professional organizations, including the European Federation of Biotechnology, International Metabolic Engineering Society, Society for Biological Engineering, and the Biotech Research Society of India. Dr. Balakumaran was working as a manager and R&D scientist at Proclean Technologies in Chennai and was also a faculty at the Academy of Competitive Examinations and Research Training. Currently, he is a scientist at the Microbial Processes and Technology Division for CSIR, National Institute for Interdisciplinary Science and Technology at Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala. Sir, it is an immense pleasure to have you with us today. I request you to take over the session.
So good evening everybody. So before starting my session, I would like to thank our convener, Professor Dr. Sri Kumar, Head, Department of Biotechnology, and Professor Dr. Renuka, Advisor, and Mrs. Preeti for inviting me for this Biotalk series and giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge on this area of research. So I welcome you all for the presentation. So the topic for today's presentation would be C13 based metabolic flux analysis. And this is going to be one of the pioneer techniques used in metabolic engineering and metabolomics analysis in order to quantify the physiology of an organism. So moving on to the presentation, first let us know about the basics of, in this slide I will be explaining basically about the basics of C13 based flux analysis and how is the experiment done and what has to be determined and which are all the equipments required for performing efficiently the C13 based flux analysis. So, you know, carbon is actually a naturally occurring compound that exists as different isotopes. And actually it exists as C12, C13 and C14 compounds, in which C12 is actually a very abundant component. It's actually exists at nearly around 98.89%, whereas C13 is very less amount. However, for quantifying the physiology of the organisms, we go for using this particular isotope of carbon called C13 that is actually non-radioactive in nature, and that can clearly elucidate and find out what is the real nature of the metabolism of an organism. And different isotopes of carbon can be discriminated, you know, by different techniques like nuclear magnetic resonance or mass spectrometric techniques also. Here, I'll be discussing more about the gas chromatography, mass spectrometric technique for determining the intracellular physiology or intracellular metabolic network of an organism. So on the right side, you can see you have a pathway, metabolic pathway, that shows how an organism utilizes glucose. So we all know there are several cycles inside an organism. So different pathways inside an organism, like the pentose phosphate pathway, the Entner-Doudoroff pathway, the glycolysis pathway, the TCA cycle, the glyoxide cycle, and so on. But whichever is the pathway, we initially know this principle that glucose is the main substrate. Of course, there are organisms that utilize xylose or many other different compounds, but glucose I would like to discuss in today's session with glucose as a carbon substrate. So once this glucose is taken up by an organism, it is converted into a compound called glucose 6-phosphate, 6-phosphogluconate, and so on. It goes on and it finally enters, the carbon flux enters into the TCA cycle, wherein ATP is produced in order to sustain the energy of the organism. So, okay, we all know that this happens in an organism, but how to actually find out what is the rate at which a particular carbon compound is converted? For example, what is the rate at which a glucose is converted to glucose 6-phosphate, or glucose 6-phosphate is converted into 6-phosphogluconate? So that is where this important technique called metabolic flux analysis comes into role. So this allows the quantification of intracellular carbon flux distribution based on C13 tracer experiments. So here an important parameter is that this steady state is assumed. Steady state is a condition in which inside an organism the rate at which the reaction happens remains constant. So the rate of conversion of a compound A to compound B and the conversion of compound B to compound C remains constant. And the arrangement of the isotopes in different substrates of the carbon are all determined by using GCMS analysis, that is gas chromatography mass spectrometric analysis. Therefore, this metabolic flux analysis remains an important tool for cellular catalyst optimization also. Now, how to get the flux information? And what, as I mentioned, GCMS is a technique and how to do this GCMS technique for proteinogenic amino acid analysis. So this picture, you can understand and get an overall view of the methodology adapted to determine the pathways. So, you know, in fermentation, we have we actually go for initial shake flask cultivation and then move on to then optimize the medium and then move on to batch or a fed batch cultivation, in which we do it in a fermenter, essentially a bioreactor. So here we can either go for a batch fermentation or else a chemostat. Chemostat is a condition wherein you maintain a steady state. So in batch fermentation, you harvest the cells in an exponential growth phase. And similarly, in a chemostat or a continuous growth, you harvest the cells in that particular stage. But before starting this, you need to keep in mind that you grow the organism by using labeled glucose, C13 labeled glucose. And this C13 labeled glucose, as mentioned here, could be UC13, that is uniformly C13 labeled, that is each and every carbon atom has been labeled by C13, or just the first carbon atom of the glucose is labeled by C13. So you decide whether you are going to go for UC13 or 1C13 labeled carbon. So once you decide the label carbon, you then feed it into the medium and then allow the organism to grow. And during the exponential phase, you harvest the cells and then you go for the next stage called protein hydrolysis, because the organism, once it utilizes the glucose, it uses it a part of its energy for biomass building up and also for producing certain proteins and amino acids that are essential for its growth. So our main motive here in metabolic engineering is to determine what is the rate at which a particular compound is produced, for which you need to determine the type of labeling pattern in proteins which are composed of amino acids. And these amino acids are synthesized from basic precursor, a carbon compound that is part of a TCA cycle. So second step is hydrolysis of protein. And the third part is derivatization of amino acids. You know, proteins are composed of amino acids and we need to derive those amino acids in order to find out the exact labeling pattern. And finally, we then go for GCMS measurement because, you know, the precursors required for the synthesis of amino acids have different labeling patterns. It could be either labeled C13 labeled at the second position or the fourth position or the third position or the fifth position. So based upon the labeling pattern, you get different amino acids. So that you determine by GCMS analysis. And afterwards, we enter a crucial stage where we actually divide the process into two stages. The first one is flux ratio analysis, and the second part is isotopomer balancing and iterative fitting. The flux ratio analysis is, for example, your particular compound, for example, here PEP, you can see on the left side, there's a compound called PEP, that is phosphoenol pyruvate. I mean, it is synthesized from two different pathways. So Embden-Meyhoff-Parnas pathway plus Entner-Doudoroff pathway and pentose phosphate pathway. So by C13 labeling technique, you can find out how much percentage of PEP is derived from EMP plus ED pathway, and how much percentage of PEP is derived from pentose phosphate pathway. That is 26%, for example, as mentioned in the figure. And on the other side, you can also try to find out the absolute fluxes of an organism. So as I mentioned before, what is the rate at which a particular molecule, for example, glucose is converted to glucose 6-phosphate. So here you can see glucose is converted to glucose 6-phosphate at 5 millimoles per gram per hour. And similarly, this glucose 6-phosphate is converted through various enzymes and various catalysis method into triose 3-phosphate, and triose 3-phosphate to PEP where the flux rate is 4.9 and PEP to pyruvate by 4.9 millimoles per gram per hour. So this is just to give you an overall picture of how metabolic flux analysis is being done. So as I said, the main assumptions here is the organism should be maintained at a steady state condition. The second point, amino acids have identical labeling pattern as that of the precursor, which I will be explaining now. And the amino acid biostatic pathway is known. So here on the right hand side, you can see two images, image A and image B. So the image A shows the precursors that have been utilized for the synthesis of the particular amino acids, like alanine, serine, cysteine, glycine, aspartic acid, methionine, and threonine. What's more important here is you just see the labeling pattern. For example, you see 3-phosphoglycerate. The labeling pattern, you see the labeling pattern here. Almost all it's a 3-carbon compound, and you see all the 3 carbons are labeled. Just immediately, if you see in the image below, that is figure B, you can see serine cysteine with the same labeled carbon. So this indicates that these amino acids are, for example, derived from this particular compound. Similarly, you have labeling pattern for each and every type of typical amino acid. So aspartic acid, methionine, threonine, that has been derived from oxaloacetate. Likewise, you can actually determine which amino acid is determined from which particular precursor from the C13 based analysis method. And this is actually what is known as a fragmentation of amino acids. You know, once you feed the derivatized amino acids into the GCMS, it undergoes several bombardments. It's actually derivatized with certain side chain compounds. And due to this bombardment, the side chains will be cleaved into separate fragments, 5 different fragments essentially. So M15, M57, M85, M59, and F302. So these are all different fragments of a particular amino acid, which are determined based on mass to charge ratio in the GCMS analysis. This I will be explaining in detail in the subsequent slides. So here, just to show you an overall picture of the flux analysis. So here you consider this is an yeast pathway that shows the synthesis of different amino acids. So here you have 2 different methods. The first one is the metabolic flux ratio analysis, and the second point is the net flux analysis. So here, you know, for example, you can see in this pathway, different amino acids are synthesized from each and every particular precursor, as I mentioned. Oxoglutaric acid, you have glutamic acid and proline. And lysine is also synthesized from OGA. And similarly, from pyruvate, you have different amino acids like alanine, valine, isoleucine being synthesized from a particular precursor. And during flux analysis, there are some pathways, particular pathways that should be considered. For example, synthesis of phosphoenol pyruvate through PP pathway, UB is nothing but upper bound, and synthesis of phosphoenol pyruvate through transketolase, a particular enzyme, or erythrose 4-phosphate from transketolase, and pentose 5-phosphate from erythrose 4-phosphate, oxaloacetic acid from phosphoenol pyruvate, or certain precursors from glycoside pathway, and so on. So this gives you an overall picture of how to do the analysis. So here the C13 constrained net flux analysis, so that this actually shows the type of inputs that you are supposed to give to the system. Actually, the first input here is the reaction network. The second one is physiological data. That is, once you start doing an experiment, you need to know what is the substrate uptake rate, and then what is the rate of production of some byproducts produced by the organism. So, and the rate of production of some other different compounds produced by the organism, that varies depending upon whether you are using an yeast or bacteria such as E. coli or some other organism for which a metabolic model is known. And the third one is biomass composition and the metabolic flux ratios. And finally, the output, as I mentioned, you will get to know the in vivo reaction velocities in terms of millimoles per gram per hour. So consider this as an yeast cell, right? So, you know, glucose is actually a basic substrate that is being utilized for the growth of an organism. So here, you know how much amount of glucose has been fed to yeast. So consider this as a Saccharomyces cerevisiae or Pichia pastoris as an yeast. So you feed glucose at this particular rate, that is millimoles per gram per hour. And then what you get finally is ethanol at 22 millimoles per gram per hour and glycerol at 1.5 millimoles per gram per hour. And you find out the growth rate of the organism to be 0.4 per hour, right? So you have, you know, now the external parameters of this particular yeast. So you know the glucose consumption rate, that is uptake rate, you know the growth rate of an organism, you know the byproducts that are produced, for example, ethanol, glycerol, and what is the rate of production of these byproducts, you know. but you don't know what is the rate at which the reaction velocities happens. I mean, the rate at which the reaction happens inside the yeast cell. You don't know about that. And what is the metabolic flux ratios? You won't know that. So without that knowledge, you cannot actually go for metabolic engineering strategies. Of course, there are two ways. One, you can actually engineer the metabolism of an organism and then go for flux analysis. And then subsequently, you can also check an organism as to what are all the pathways that are very strong, weak, and then accordingly, you can engineer the organism for production of a particular metabolite. So here, by metaphor analysis, you come to know that glucose 6-phosphate is converted into ribulose 5-phosphate at a particular level, that is 10%, and glucose 6-phosphate is converted into pyruvate at a level of 90%, right? And then pyruvate is converted into oxaloacetate at 95%, and pyruvate to TCA cycle happens at 5%. So now we have got to know the metabolic flux ratio analysis. So what is the rate at which each and every pathway is contributing to the production of a particular product is known from metaphor analysis. And the second part of the study, that would be net flux analysis, in which you know now the external parameters like the glucose substrate uptake rate, the production of ethanol, the production of glycerol, and the input metabolic flux ratio analysis, But now you need to know the net flux analysis, that is the reaction velocities, the rate at which a particular product compound is converted into another product. So here you can see by C13 labeling, we have found out that glucose 6-phosphate is converted into ribulose 5-phosphate at the rate of 1.6 millimoles per gram per hour, and glucose 6-phosphate is converted into pyruvate at a rate of 13.7 millimoles per gram per hour, and pyruvate to oxaloacetate at 0.5. So these are all some key points that we slowly build up and try to engineer the organism in order to obtain our product of interest. So with this, the tutorial part will come to an end. So I'm just telling you, giving a summary. I'm just summarizing you what all we learned through flux analysis. So information about proteinogenic amino acids is determined by GCMS analysis, and flux ratios as additional constraints for stoichiometric models is determined, and this allows the determination of intracellular fluxes. Right. Okay. So now we know what is the C13 based metabolic flux analysis. And then what are all the two important components of flux analysis, namely the metabolic flux ratio analysis and the netto analysis that determines the intracellular velocities of the different pathways. Now, how to do this experiment? How to go for the C13 metabolic flux analysis experimentally? So now we have a protocol for C13 labeling experiment. Before starting an experiment, whether it's a bacteria or an yeast or some other kind of microbe, you need to know certain key parameters. The first point is the growth rate, substrate uptake rate, and growth curve of an organism. See, only by knowing the growth curve of an organism, you will be able to determine the exponential phase, the mid-exponential phase at which you harvest the cells. And once you get to know the growth rate and the substrate uptake rate, you have to feed all these data into the software which analyzes, which combines the analysis from the metaphor and the netto analysis and gives you the overall productivity of your particular product of interest. And then labeling strategy, that is the second most important point. As I said, there are two labeling strategies in the experiment. The first one is UC13 and the next one is 1C13. UC13 is each and every carbon of the backbone is actually uniformly labeled. That actually helps to determine the fluxes in an organism, in the entire organism. That is, each and every pathway you can analyze it by UC13. However, if certain researchers, they know, okay, I want to concentrate only on pentose phosphate pathway, for example, I'm saying, so only the first carbon of the glucose goes through this pentose phosphate pathway. So it's better to use 1C13 labeled carbon. So in that way, you have to determine that. Third point is the percentage of inoculum you are using for the experiment. So you have to inoculate with 3% or less of your envisaged harvesting biomass concentration. Say, for example, here you have, for example, 3 OD or 5 OD of envisaged biomass. So 3% of that has to be inoculated at the starting point. So it's not like you just inoculate at how much ever OD I want. I want to inoculate at 1 OD, 2 OD, or 3 OD. That doesn't make a sense. So you have to inoculate at very, very less concentration of cells. And the fourth point is you have to perform, before starting the experiment, you have to perform the growth experiment and determine the growth rate and measure the initial biomass in terms of cell dry weight. Okay, cell dry weight should be usually 0.3 milligrams. So this helps you to actually plan your experiment and make sure that you are not using a very abundant level of biomass that leads to several erroneous problems in the experiment. And the next point is hydrochloric acid for pellet hydrolysis. That's an efficient thing to be used for hydrolysis of the organism. And then derivatization using MBDS TFA and acetonitrile at 50-50 ratio. And then analysis of the compounds and amino acids by gas chromatography, mass spectrometric analysis. And here we move on to the methodology. So I divide it into two parts. First one is the growth physiology analytics, and the second part is the derivatization of amino acids. The growth physiology analytics contains an important step wherein you, as I said, you harvest the cells in exponential phase, that is used as a pre-inoculum, and cells are inoculated at a particular OD. The experiment, we optimized at 0.5 OD, and they are regularly monitored for biomass concentration every 3 hours up to exponential phase. Actually, the organism which I was using for this experiment was an yeast called Pichia pastoris. I actually tried to express copper-dependent enzyme called lacase in Pichia pastoris, and I just wanted to study as to how the copper metabolism impacts the central carbon metabolism of Pichia pastoris. So the data and the analysis that I'm showing here is based upon that particular study. And then I went on to study the extracellular parameters like substrate uptake rate, product formation rate, the growth rate, as I mentioned in the earlier slide. And here I did the experiments in shake flask, that is assuming a pseudo steady state. That is possible, but provided you have to harvest the cells at as I said, that particular exponential phase. So that particular phase is very important, crucial for doing the C13 flux analysis experiments. An HPHC analysis in which a particular column you have to use, and you have to determine the flow rate, which I was using 5 millimolar sulfuric acid, flow rate of 0.8 ml per minute at 50 degrees centigrade, and UV detector was used. Amino acid derivatization, 0.3 milligram of dry cell weight of cells were collected by exponential phase and analyzed for labeled amino acids. Cells were harvested, and they were treated with hydrochloric acid and then hydrolyzed for 6 hours at very high temperature. Hydrolyzed pellets were suspended in acetonitrile and 30 microliter of derivatizing agent. That is a key reagent used here in this experiment. That is N-methyl, N-terbutyl dimethylsilite trifluoroacetamide, MBD, shortly called as MBDS TFA. That's a key derivatizing agent used in this study. The entire content was then incubated for 1 hour at 85 degrees centigrade and then analyzed by GCMS analysis. And the GCMS analysis of amino acids, we actually did it by gas chromatography, as I mentioned earlier, with by using a mobile phase helium-5 flow rate of 1 ml per minute. And 1 microliter of sample was injected into that at a oven temperature of 140 to 270 degrees centigrade. And TSQ triple quadruple mass spec was used for this study, and Excalibur software was used for GCMS raw data analysis. And most of this experiment was done using BMDH medium. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide, BMDH medium with 5 gram per liter glucose. And the growth was monitored at regular intervals, and mid-exponential phase for this particular organism, Pichia pastoris, was evaluated to be 2 to 4 OD, was fixed as a threshold for cellular harvest and subsequent analysis. And C13 labeled glucose that we used was UC13. Actually, it was 20% uniformly labeled carbon, UC13. And parameters that were measured during this study, as I said in the earlier slide, extracellular parameters measured were the concentration of pyruvate, fumarate, growth rate, glucose uptake rate, and parameters that related to intracellular fluxes like oxalate state production from cytosolic pyruvate. Mitochondrial oxalate state derived through anaplerotic reactions were also used for flux calculations. And you can also note down this particular software, Fiat Flux software, developed by Zamboni et al., was used in the study to determine the fluxes. It is not a free software, it's a licensed software that has been used for analysis of the intracellular fluxes of the Pichia pastoris. So this diagram shows the extracellular metabolite profile of the host GS115, and the F6 LAC clone is actually the clone that contains the recombinant clone that contains the lacase enzyme, that expresses the lacase enzyme. So stable isotope tracer experiments, you can see the overall workflow. So you first inoculate the organism wherein carbon source is not labeled. I mean, you try to build up a pre-culture, and then you inoculate into another shake flask with a very less amount of glucose, wherein the carbon source is C13 labeled, and then you harvest the cells at the mid log phase that you determined through your previous experiments, and then you hydrolyze, dry the cells, and then you derivatize the amino acids, and then you actually go for GCMS analysis to determine the labeling pattern of your precursors. So culture vessels, whichever vessel you're using it, but usually you can go for in shake flask, you can go for maybe 100, maybe 50 ml of your fermentation, or in chemostat you can go for very less amount to minimize the usage of C13 labeled glucose. So this is a typical lab fermenter which we were all using it for production of lacase. So you have this fermenter fitted with pH controller, temperature controller, and then coolants, and then different process modules are present there. This is well suited for high cell density fermentation, off-gas analytics. In C13 based flux analysis, there are certain process wherein we also take into account carbon dioxide that is emitted by that comes out as an exit gas. So how much amount of carbon is lost through the due to a fermentation process is also considered for flux calculations. So analytics, as I said, glucose concentration, ethanol acetate concentration, or whichever acetate or whichever compound has been secreted by the organism, biomass concentration has to be determined. Labeling pattern of proteinogenic amino acids. And for determining the glucose concentration, you can either use an enzyme kit. For ethanol, you can go for UV or HPLC, and for biomass concentration, you can use a spectrophotometer, a UV visible spectrophotometer, and or through a traditional method. And the labeling pattern is determined by GCMS or LCMS techniques. So here, this diagram actually shows the graphs that are obtained in the GCMS analysis. So in the first image A, you can see a list of different amino acids being shown up in the GCMS chromatogram. Okay, so here you take one particular amino acid, for example, this amino acid E. So this amino acid is actually broken down into several different fragments. As I said, initially, you have 5 different fragments being produced. So M57, and then you have M85, M15, M159, and then F302. These are all the different fragments of a particular amino acid. And if you actually consider a particular, if you take up one particular mass, M85, that is actually split into several different masses, mass to charge ratio. That is mentioned here, M plus O, M plus 1, M plus 2, M plus 3, M plus 4. So there is an increase in masses. And as mentioned in the previous slide, you have the precursors and the amino acids synthesized from the precursors. And this graph is actually a very important parameter in determining the fluxes inside an organism. So the software which we will be using intrinsically analyzes each and every amino acid, their labeling pattern, and the increase in the masses of that particular amino acid to determine the precursors from which the amino acids were determined, and finally the metabolic, finally the intracellular velocities of the organism. So moving on to the next slide. So this was the chromatogram that I obtained during my research work. So the upper part shows the chromatogram of the amino acids obtained in the during the analysis, and the bottom part of the figure shows the mass ratios of different amino acids that were obtained during the study, as shown in the previous slide. So here you can see I told you earlier that each and every amino acid undergoes 5 different fragmentations. So you can see fragments A, B, and then C, D, and E. So so those are all M15, M57, M85, M159, M302. So this table actually shows what are all the different fragmentation patterns for each and every amino acid. Say for example, alanine, when it is synthesized from when it's synthesized from a C13 labeled precursor, you get actually 2 different fragments only. That is analyzed by GCMS method. So you have M57 and M85. And similarly, when you are using glycine, you have actually these type of fragments called M15 and then M57, M85, and then M85 and then M159 and F302. So for each and every amino acid, you have several different fragments, and based on this fragmentation pattern, it automatically decides, okay, this amino acid is alanine, this amino acid is leucine or isoleucine, and this amino acid should have been synthesized from this particular precursor based on the labeling pattern. So this shows an overall view of what type of fragmentation pattern that you can expect from each and every amino acid. So flux-based analysis on C13 labeling experiment. This is just an example for metaphor analysis, wherein you see they have, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, they have used one C13 labeled carbon, and this C13 labeled glucose actually produces pyruvate with the labeling pattern in 3 different fashion. So for example, if the pyruvate is first carbon label, then it's actually in the Entner-Doudoroff pathway. It's actually in the 3rd position. It means that it is in the glycolysis pathway. And if it is not at all labeled, then it means that it is in the pentose phosphate pathway. So based on this, we determine whether the pyruvate belongs to, pyruvate is the energy of pyruvate is derived mainly through Entner-Doudoroff or glycolysis or pentose phosphate pathway. So here, based on this, you determine how much percentage is moving to the ED pathway and how much percentage is moving to the pentose phosphate pathway. So I'll be explaining about this particular software. Before that, I would like to just explain what are the steps in data processing. So once we get the chromatogram, we just actually feed this file into the GCMS software. You save the file in a CDF format and then convert this flux format file by the FearFlux software. And this FearFlux software, this will be the software which I will be explaining now, that will be using for analyzing the metaphor, the intracellular flux velocities and the metabolic flux ratio analysis. So this FearFlux software is actually inbuilt with the capacity to remove derivatization prone errors and takes non-labeled inoculum into account, and then takes natural isotope abundance into account, and specify. You have to actually specify the labeling strategy, whether you're using a UC13 labeled carbon or a 1C13 labeled carbon, and redundant information is fitted. So through certain statistical techniques like least square minimization of errors, and user intervention of experimental doubtful amino acid fragments is also possible. For example, there could be some erroneous fragments for which it cannot determine the precise flux ratio or the intracellular velocities. So in that case, users can actually intervene in the process and actually remove that fragments out of the study. So now I will just explain you with the case study that I did during my research work. It was on heterologous production, characterization, application of Aspergillus clavatus lacase expressed in Pichia pastoris. So this part of work was done in Anna University, and with the help of DAD fellowship, I was fortunate enough to work with Professor Lars Blank in RWTH Aachen University, Institute of Applied Microbiology, where I had a more deep understanding of C13 based metabolic flux analysis, how important that technique is actually to determine the intracellular reaction velocities of a particular organism. So lacases, lacases are actually oxidoreductases, a blue copper family of enzymes that catalyzes both oxidation and reduction reactions. So it has basically 3 different sites, T1, T2, and T3 sites. T1 is the site where the substrate oxidation occurs, and T2 and T3 are the sites where the reduction of the substrate occurs. And most of these lacases are glycoproteins, ubiquitous in nature. And they have a very broad substrate spectrum. You know, lacases are used in a large number of applications as actually used in bioremediation, it's used in the synthesis of antibiotics, it's used in dye degradation, used in several bioremediation techniques also, and it's also used for cofactor regeneration and so on. So the organism which was used for isolating the gene coding for lacase was Aspergillus clavatus. That was actually a fungi found in soil and animal manure, and it produces particular spores and toxin called patulin that causes disease in humans and animals. However, we were quite interested to know about unexplored enzyme from this fungi called as lacase. So applications, we were the first to actually exploit the applications of this particular lacase. And this lacase actually has 4 domains. So based on the consensus sequence, it was found that it has T1 binding site with the phenylalanine, T2 binding site, then T3 binding site with conserved leucine. So applications, as I said, it's used in the degradation of phenolic compounds from biphenols and dye degradation of azo dyes, diamond fast brown and indigo carmine and several other reactive dyes. It's also used for organic synthesis of naphthaquinone and benzoquinone derivatives and oxidation of several phenolic compounds. And the pharmaceutical sectors, it's used in synthesis of several medical reagents and synthesis of several new antibiotics, and it possesses actually HIV-1 reverse transcriptase inhibitors inhibitory activity. In other applications, it's used as a biosensor for pollutant detection and also for polyaromatic hydrocarbon degradation. The organism which we used in the study was, as I mentioned before, Pichia pastoris. It's a very strong industrial workhorse. It's a yeast platform, very robust yeast platform for production of majority of recombinant, majority of proteins, whether it be of plant origin or fungal origin or bacterial origin. It is possible to express it in very large quantity in Pichia pastoris. It's actually a methanol metabolizing yeast that grows in very simple and expensive media. It has 2 types of promoter. One is inducible promoter, that is Avoexmin, that uses methanol for inducing the promoter, and gap promoter that is actually a constitutive promoter that grows that expresses the protein of interest and using glucose. And Pichia pastoris, as I said, it has several advantages: high level of expression, protein folding, and so on. And the type of strain which we used in the study was GS115, host strain with mutation in histidinol dehydrogenase, which means you have to supply histidine to the medium for obtaining a sustained growth of the organism. This was the cloning strategy which we used. So the lacase was isolated from that particular organism, codon optimized, and then it was expressed into a shuttle vector called PGAP Z alpha A under the control of the gap promoter. It was then transformed into Pichia pastoris, and then it was the speciality of Pichia pastoris is that the gene gets integrated into the genome. So it gets integrated in a strong way inside the genome of the Pichia pastoris through the homologous recombination method, and there is a sustained release of this enzyme once it actually acquires that particular expected carbon source. So lacase is actually a copper-dependent enzyme. We wanted to initially find out the influence of copper on Pichia pastoris. So we found that one study was we wanted to find out the effect of increasing copper concentration on the growth rate of Pichia pastoris. What we found was from 0.1 to actually 1 millimolar, there wasn't much effect in the growth rate of Pichia pastoris, but beyond 1 millimolar and 2 millimolar concentration, it actually significantly reduced the growth rate of Pichia pastoris. And we also identify an adaptation in Pichia wherein it actually tried to club together in agglomerates, a condition which we observed for the first time in Pichia pastoris when it was exposed to very high concentration of copper. And the intracellular copper accumulation studies was done to determine the amount of copper accumulated by Pichia pastoris, because that plays a very key role in producing the enzyme. And the intracellular copper is actually replaced by the copper trafficking is actually mediated by copper dependent pathway that exists inside the Pichia pastoris, or it is also being done through a metabolism that exists inside the Pichia pastoris, that is through the central carbon metabolism. So here we determine intracellular copper accumulation through a technique known as atomic absorption spectroscopy, wherein determine the 0.1 millimolar copper addition to the medium significantly enhance the lacase activity, whereas above that actually reduce the lacase activity. And the PICIA was able to accumulate very high copper content inside this. We observed that nearly 20 milligram of copper per gram cell dry weight was accumulated by PICIA. This was the first report first study to report the accumulation of copper by well-studied organism PICIA pastoris. So this could pave the way for production of more and more copper-dependent enzymes in PICIA pastoris. And this shows the effect of copper concentration on the fraction of copper, because some copper is taken up by the cell, some copper just gets absorbed to the cell wall. So we wanted to determine also what is the percentage of copper absorbed to the cells. So from the total copper, we actually subtract the percentage of copper absorbed to the cell to determine the intracellular copper that is present inside the cells of PICIA pastoris. So through this, we determined that this intracellular copper content was nearly around 1 to 2 milligram of copper per gram cell dry weight. So 0.1 milligram of millimolar copper was more than sufficient to increase the lacase activity. And moreover, we also determined that 21 milligram of copper per gram cell dry weight, 2 millimolar concentration was accumulated by PICIA. And we also found out that PICIA pastoris was able to accumulate nearly 10-fold higher copper, that is 0.12 10 to the power of minus 9 micromoles of copper at 0.1 millimolar copper load, or a 10-fold excess copper. Probably the excess copper, we hypothesized that it could reside in the vacuole of PICIA pastoris. I mean, it could be used as a storage and for later stage production of lacase. So then we wanted to find out, okay, we now identified what is the intracellular copper concentration, what is its effect on subsequent lacase production. And then we moved on to find out if the copper is really inhibiting the central metabolism of the PICIA pastoris. So this slide just wanted to convey you an important message that copper is actually an important cofactor for most of the enzymes in the metabolism of an organism. You see, succinate dehydrogenase, an important enzyme for in TCA cycle, and aconitase, they become rate limiting when the copper concentration falls below a particular micromolar concentration. And biocytic pathways for branching amino acids, for example, arginine, aromatic amino acids, cysteine or methionine, are affected by copper deficiency. Pyruvate metabolism is also significantly affected by deficiency of copper. So this actually tempted us to go deep into the study of understanding the metabolism, central carbon metabolism of PICIA, and how does it affect, how does it get affected by the varying copper concentrations in the medium. So our objective in this study was to determine the copper load and its impact on intracellular flux distribution and lacase production. So as previously determined, we actually we identified what is the growth phase of an organism, what is the growth rate of an organism, what are the extracellular parameters of an organism, what is the rate at which a particular byproduct is produced by an organism, what is the rate at which it is consumed. So all these parameters you take it into consideration, and you then feed all these into the software. So now I show you this FearFlux software, a software where you give a name for your particular compound and the instrument name, and then the model you have to choose here, whether it's an yeast model. You see, if the model is available, then it's good. I mean, if model is already incorporated, there are certain already incorporated default models present in the software that can be utilized for determining the flux ratios and the intracellular reaction rate of the particular organism. However, in case if some models are not present, you can try to incorporate those type of models into the software. So you have to determine the type of model, whether it's an yeast model or it's a bacterial model. You have to determine from here. And then as I said earlier, the unlabeled biomass, 3% of unlabeled biomass was there, and then signal error you have to mention. And whether you are going for a 1C13 or a UC13 labeled carbon, you have to mention it here. So UC30 labeled carbon was nearly 20% and purity was 99%, 80% was natural carbon. So all these details you fit in here, and the chromatogram that you get from the GCMS software, you have to fit it into the software. And then you get immediately you have to do some, the users have to intervene with the erroneous actually graphs, and then you have to remove them, and then immediately you get the flux ratios, wherein you get, for example, phosphoenol pyruvate synthesized through pentose phosphate pathway, that is 0.25 plus or minus 0.05. It gives you a value with error percentage also, with standard deviation. And similarly, for enthros 4-phosphate through trans-ketolase, you get 0.48 plus or minus 0.03. So for each and every reaction, you get what is the flux ratio mapping for that. And second part, once you get that details, you have to feed all the flux ratio details here, flux ratios. So serine from glycolysis, PEP through PPP, and then pyruvate from malate, all these details along with error have to be fed in the next step of the analysis. And you have to also feed, you can see at the bottom extracellular fluxes, that is the glucose, that is the growth rate. You can find that is mu is nothing but growth rate. You have to feed it here, the glucose uptake rate, that is usually comes with a negative value because it is taken up, that has to be mentioned by a negative symbol. And then you have to also mention the pyruvate concentration or the fumarate concentration or glycerol concentration, whichever substrate we are having there. You have to mention all those values here. And before analysis, you have to just checklist what are all compounds which you have taken into consideration in this reaction, because there could be some compounds that is not some particular enzymes or genes that is not required for this particular analysis. So you can actually uncheck those particular enzymes as mentioned here. Only that is required. That is required and taken into consideration for analysis can be put up here. And what are the metabolites that needs to be considered in the pathway, that also can be selected from here. And then you feed the extracellular fluxes and then estimate all. Once you give, you get a value, F value, from which you determine, okay, what are all, you get finally these kind of values. So for example, glucose intake, this much was a value you got, and glucose balance biomass, this much you got. So all these values you get, and these values you actually put it into flux map like this, and then based on which you determine, okay, it's whether you are going for a relative flux or an absolute flux, you have to determine from the study. So here I was using actually a reference, that is GS115 host, and then I used two types of clones. Sorry, so I was using two type of clones, GS-LAC 0.3 and GS-LAC 0.1. So GS-LAC 0.3 was an organism recombinant clone wherein 0.3 millimolar copper was used for the growth of the organism, and GS-LAC 0.1 in which 0.1 millimolar copper was used for the growth of the organism. And here actually we determine what is the flux through the organism. So in reference, we observed that reference we had a glucose uptake rate of 3.5 plus or minus 0.05 millimoles per gram per hour, and in GS-LAC at the 0.3 millimolar copper concentration, we had a glucose uptake rate of 3.9 plus or minus 0.15 millimoles per gram per hour, and GS-LAC 0.1, we had a glucose uptake rate of 3.4 plus or minus 0.0 millimoles per gram per hour. And then you can see this 57, 59, 60 for glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate. So these values actually indicate really the intracellular velocities, that is the rate of conversion of this glucose 6-phosphate to fructose 6-phosphate and so on. So all using the values that you obtain from the software, you construct a metabolic map, you get a final flux map to this, and then you determine what are all the flux ratios, what are all the important pathways, and what are all the important metabolites required for the synthesis of a particular compound, how much of each of this precursors is diverted towards biomass, whether too much of your precursor is diverted towards the biomass, or how to stop the pathway getting diverted too much towards the biomass, how to knock out certain genes, that you can actually find out from construction of this metabolic map. So this was the conclusions that we obtained from the metabolic flux analysis. So the pyruvate and fumarate production rate of wild type organisms and things were determined, and there was a very slight difference in growth rate. And the glucose uptake rate was almost the same in both the strains, and relative flux through the TCA cycle, that is the tricarboxylic acid cycle and anaplerosis, were nearly 59% and 41% respectively, and nearly 66% and 35% of metabolic fluxes was diverted towards glycolysis and pentose phosphate pathway, and there was an unchanged flux distribution through the central carbon metabolism under varying concentration. So this was a key thing that we identified in this research, that actually the pitchia had the ability to withstand very high concentration of copper, and it was actually determined that there was no much change in flux distribution and through the central carbon metabolism, and there was no competitive regulation of copper through the metabolic network apart from the copper trafficking pathway. So that's it, and you can find more information about this if you wanted to know more about this lactase production and the copper dependent enzyme production in Pichia pastoris about the flux. You can have a look into this particular manuscript, the trade-off of availability and growth inhibition through copper for production of copper dependent enzymes by Pichia pastoris. And if you want to know more about the software, you can also check this particular manuscript, this VFlux software for metabolic flux analysis from 13C glucose experiments. It was actually developed by Dr. Nicola Zamboni, Institute of Biotechnology, ETH Zurich, Switzerland. So you can have a look into it, and in case you have any doubts or how to proceed with C13 based technique to analyze the metabolism of organism, you can very well contact me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The session was really informative, and I'm pretty sure many people learned about the technique. We have a couple of questions here from YouTube, sir. Shall I ask them to you now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so the first question is asked by Danesh Kumar, and he wants to know, is the C13 flux analysis can be done in bacteria or any other microorganisms? And if so, what would the procedure be?
So to answer your first question, yes, it is possible to do it in bacteria. There are several reports in which E. coli or Pseudomonas foetida or several different organisms have been used. And as I said, there are several, the protocol has to be optimized. So what I showed you now is a generalized protocol. You have to optimize the amount of, I mean, you have to find out the growth rate of the organism. You have to determine the extracellular parameters, as I mentioned. I mean, you have to determine at which stage you have to harvest the cells, and that might definitely vary from organism to organism. So what I showed you here is for Pichia pastoris, and definitely you have to optimize it for the bacterial choice of your interest.
Okay, sir. Thank you. The next question is from Sukumaran Prabhu. Yeah. And he asked, why can't we label the carbon C6 position in glucose in C1?
Actually, yes. I mean, you are actually using the C13 labeled glucose. As I said, it's available in the market as UC13 and 1C13 label carbon also. I mean, laboratory, it is, I think it would be, I mean, as a research wise, you can try it out, but commercially, I think mostly these two type of labeled carbons are present. Of course, if you wanted to do a new study wherein you wanted to identify a particular metabolite and you want to check whether it is derived from this particular pathway or that particular pathway, you can actually go for carbon that is labeled on the 6th position, and you can definitely very well analyze the intracellular velocities also. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, what about the metabolic flux analysis in the case of multicellular organisms? So multicellular organisms, in the sense you, I think you mentioned maybe in cell lines or higher eukaryotes, maybe. Yeah, it is possible. So there are quite a number of publications, and there are a lot of research going on also determine the flux analysis in cell lines. For example, I mean, if you wanted to produce a particular compound through, for example, in cell lines, in animal cell lines also, it is possible to actually do a C13 labeling technique and try to determine, ascertain the pathway as to which pathway is the best one for improving the productivity and so on. Yes, it is possible. Yeah. Okay, sir. The next question is, if you label D-glucose, how do we study the L-derived amino acids during the metabolic analysis?
So it actually, I mean, it's not that if it's D-glucose you are using, you won't be able to determine L amino acids or things like that. I mean, so the metabolism is actually utilized. The glucose is a common substrate. It's a common carbon source being utilized by the organism. Whichever is the carbon source, it utilizes that, and you have L or D amino acids being produced, and under that particular constraint. So this is a usual method. I mean, there is no particular differentiation for L and D amino acids. If in case you specifically wanted to that, you have to use a specific column for GCMS and so on. But unless then, it is not a very tricky issue, and you can easily analyze that by the normal usual method. So it is not a difficult parameter.
Okay, sir. The next question is from Akshar Kumar.
Yeah.
And he's asked, do you think that the flux analysis is an alternative to wet lab done for determining the growth rates?
No, I wouldn't say it's an alternative. I would say, it's a part of growth rate determination. It's actually a part of the flux analysis experiment. I wouldn't say it is a total. It will avoid that, and it is actually an alternative because you see, as I mentioned in the previous slides, this growth rate is really important for determining harvesting the cells. So only when you know the growth rate, you can go for C13 flux analysis. That is an important. So it's not kind of an alternate, but it is an integral part of C13 based flux analysis.
Okay, sir. The next question is, what are the other methods for determining the metabolic informations in a pathway other than the carbon isotope labeling?
So you see, now the technology has so developed that it is possible to actually determine it through various methods. For example, one commonly used method, microarray. Microarray, it's a technique to determine the intracellular expression of intracellular gene expression of a particular microbe. So in the same way as here, you don't go for labeling, however, but you grow the organism and you harvest the cells, and then you have specific probes to which you attach your DNA or RNA of interest to that, and then you determine what all genes are expressed under that particular stressed condition and what all genes are not expressed under that condition. So and then you have several advanced techniques also to determine the intracellular expression analysis, like metabolomics analysis, transcriptomics, and then genomics method. So this technique, I would say, in case you wanted to improve the productivity of a particular metabolite or a compound, then you can go for C13 labeling and C13 flux analysis to determine the intracellular reaction velocities. So through which you can actually, this technique would be the most suitable in case you wanted to go for some specific gene knockouts or some knock-ins, or you wanted to overexpress certain genes. That in that case, that would be best method to ascertain the organism. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is, can metabolic flux analysis be used to simulate a biological pathway, and can it be done using MATLAB program?
Yeah, actually MATLAB is being utilized. So I was not too much into MATLAB, but actually you can indeed develop a metabolic model. MATLAB programming is a very, very essential tool in metabolic engineering, metabolic flux analysis. And if you have an opportunity, or if you get an opportunity to learn about MATLAB, I would advise you to please learn Matrix Laboratory, MATLAB, and learn the techniques on how to develop a model. And it is also possible to actually make the calculations easy, rather than doing in an Excel sheet and finding out the values of the reaction rate velocities and the extracellular parameter values. If you have a MATLAB, it is possible to do it in a very less time. And if you know how to develop a model in MATLAB, that would definitely add value to metabolic flux analysis.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Sarvan and team. And he's asked, can we try other heavy metal resistance in yeast by using the same method?
Yeah, sure, definitely. You can. I did it with copper, but there are several reports have been tried with different metal concentrations. Increasing the metal concentration is actually very toxic to many organisms. And certain organisms, however, have the innate dynamic gene circuits that are able to express and actually avoid that danger of metal intolerance. So you can definitely come out, for example, if you are using a new organism and you wanted to you found that that is found to be a suitable, very good organism that has a very good metal tolerance, then you can very well do this C13 based metabolic flux analysis and determine what are all the important pathways that are essential for the organism and how they help that organism to tolerate to that increased metal resistance. That can be definitely done. Yes, it is possible.
Okay, thank you, sir. And the last question for this session is by Ramesh Srinivasan.
Yeah.
And he said, lacase, although useful in phenolic degradation, doesn't find a place in commercial biodegradable technology in India. Why do you think so?
No, I don't think it is, in the biodegradable technology and such, because there are certain companies like Novozymes which are already working on this particular enzyme, lacase, and they're also into developing new technologies using these enzymes for bioremediations and other purposes. So it has indeed a commercial value. Lacase is actually used in majority of environmental applications. Only thing, tailoring the enzyme would be a factor. I mean, there are a lot of publications, immense number of papers coming on lacase, but the point is, majority of the lacase are catered to a particular thing. Maybe if you are able to tailor that enzyme, if you are able to do some protein engineering modifications of lacase to cater to bioremediation or, for example, to clean up certain pollutants or polyaromatic hydrocarbon degradation, that would definitely do that job. So I think there is immense prospects for lacase, and there is a very good prospects for developing it into a formulation technology for using it for bioremediation purposes and for other several applications also. And I think the market is actually slowly growing up. So there's a good demand for lacase too.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. With that, we will be winding up the Q&A session. Thank you very much, sir. It was a very informative session. And also thank you very much for taking your time to answer some of our participants' questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge. I thank the HOD, I thank the organizer. I thank everybody for allowing me to share my knowledge with you. And also, it was also an interactive session. Although I couldn't directly see the YouTube, it was very informative, and also I also had an opportunity to answer a lot of new thought-provoking questions from you. So thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Now I call upon our advisor, Dr. Renuka Vishwanathan, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening to all. It's a privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of the Department of Biotechnology and on my own behalf for this organized BioTalk Series Week 7 program. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to our management, St. Joseph's College of Engineering and St. Joseph's Group of Institutions, Chairman Dr. B. Babu Manoharan Sir, Managing Director Ms. Jessipriya Ma'am, and Director Mr. Sasi Shekhar Sir for providing us this opportunity and platform for this event. I wish to express my thanks to our Principal Dr. B. Seshagiri Rao and Dean Dr. M. Parvatavardhani for their constant encouragement. I heartily thank our HOD Dr. G. Sri Kumar for his guidance and strong support. I also thank our faculty for their cooperation. I sincerely thank the speaker of today's program, Mr. Dr. Balakumaran from NIST, Kerala, scientist, for gracing this event and for sharing his inspirational speech and research documentation and a detailed presentation on metabolic flux analysis. I wish to congratulate Ms. Preeti, the organizer of today's program, for the arrangement and making this webinar a success. I also thank all the participants who have taken interest in spite of the pandemic in taking part in this webinar. I thank the students of the third year biotechnology for their technical support in the smooth conduction of the event. Finally, I wish to thank Almighty in making this event a success. Gratitude is a powerful catalyst for good learning. Thank you. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.
Once again, I'd like to thank you all for attending this session. I hope to see you all in future events organized by the Department of Biotechnology from St. Joseph's College of Engineering. Until then, take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.